I think that these GLP-1s are a very serious thing. I think the fitness industry has sort of a tendency historically to be like, all you have to do is go to our gym and follow our nutrition plan and count your macros and you'll be fine. But that's not everybody's journey. And, we talk about gym intimidation and reducing that barrier of entry. I think that GLP-1s are doing that. Whether we like it, don't like it, support it or not, it is reducing that barrier of entry.
This is All Things Fitness and Wellness, hosted by Chrissy Van. Together, we're uniting industry thought leaders and fitfluencers on the mission to inspire innovation and encourage people to live a life fit and well. On today's episode, we're excited to welcome Tara Levitt, co-founder and managing partner of Alta Technology Group. With extensive experience in member management software and operations, Tara has worked with some of the largest global brands in the fitness industry. In our discussion, we'll explore strategies for career advancement in the tech industry. Tara will share insights on how to move up in the tech space, emphasizing the importance of versatility and big picture thinking. Her experience across various roles, from operations to customer success, provides valuable lessons on leveraging diverse skills to stay ahead in the competitive fitness technology landscape. We'll also explore the key innovations and trends from the Fitness Technology Summit. Tara will highlight the significance of networking and panel discussions at the summit and the importance of collaborative efforts for driving the industry forward. And lastly, Tara will discuss the key focuses for enhancing the Health Club member journey in 2024. Before we get to it, be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes weekly featuring industry thought leaders and influencers. I'm your host, Chrissy Van, and this is ATFW. Well, I am so thrilled to have Tara Levitt joining me because you are someone that I have seen grace the stage at the Fitness Technology Summit, have had this incredible career that you have just continued to grow and grow. So I know we're going to learn a ton from you today. So Tara, I know things are busy. So first of all, thank you so much for making the time today.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm a huge fan. I listen to all your podcasts. I'm really happy that you're doing this and that we get your voice in our industry. It's been much needed. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, and I think one of the things that's made me so attracted to this industry is that people have such personal ties to their why. And I know in any business book, you hear that term over and over again, but this is one where people genuinely live and breathe it. I mean, you and I were just on Capitol Hill for the fly-in, and you could see bright and early people are out for their runs going around DC. They're getting out for their workouts. They're having their voices heard, and you're a big part of that. And thank goodness, because you also have this long tenure in the industry. And when I do a Google search of Tara and I look at the bios, it basically says you were kind of born and raised within this industry. So when we see that sentence, what exactly does that mean? Where did it begin?
Yeah, I sort of joke that I would have never chosen the fitness industry. It chose me. And a lot of people in our industry were athletes or they were gym operators at a really early age because they're like so passionate about fitness. And that is not my journey at all. So I actually was a nanny for a family while I was going to college. And the father of the family that I nannied for, he owned a small company that did full service member services. So this was sort of back before you could sign up online for memberships and things like that. And he would work with club operators that would hire him, and they would literally FedEx their membership agreements, their cancellation forms, freeze forms, all of that to our office. And we had a whole team of people that would process that paperwork, and we did like member services. So if they had questions, they could call us, and we had a call center. And so as I was nannying for him, I was looking to just make some extra money. And he said, well, you have a really nice voice. You would do well on the phone. So why don't you come in and help work in this call center on the side? And I was like, okay, sure. And that's kind of how it got started. I got in there. They were using, it was check-free software, which is now owned by Jonas, back in the day. And the second that I started like navigating in the member profiles and using the system, it just like clicked and made sense to me. And we were a really small company, so it was really easy for me to kind of ramp up and start taking on more responsibility. So it's kind of by accident that I did that. I ended up working there for 5 years, and I did a lot of data conversions. I got to know my friends over at ABC Fitness and over at Jonas because we were working together on a lot of different things. And then Al Noshirvani, who was the founder of MotionSoft, he had just made a new member management software. He was looking for beta testers. He reached out and asked if we were interested. We said yes. And I had a lot of opinions about the software and what could be better. And so Al was like, you know what? Why don't you move to DC and come help us make this product amazing? And I jumped at the opportunity. I couldn't have gotten out of Seattle fast enough and got in the moving truck and went to DC and ended up at MotionSoft for 10 years. So that's like how it got started. And it was purely an accident. I never thought I would end up in this industry, but I've loved it from day one. And it's just like made sense to me.
What I appreciate about that is number one, that first individual was like, I'll give you a job because you have a nice voice, which
Yeah.
not to discount that you do, but
Yeah.
like what a
Yeah.
basic skill set to say to an individual, which I
Totally.
get of the time. But the fact that you leveled up so much because you knew how to use that voice
Yes.
and it
Yeah.
was all your talent and bringing that to the surface. So I'm
Yeah.
curious because you said you were in college at the time. So what were
Mhm.
you actually intending career wise at that early stage of your life or studying?
Yeah, good question. I was very lost in my early 20s. I originally wanted to be a philosophy major, and those were like the classes I enjoyed the most. So I was like, well, that's what I want to do. And everybody said, well, you can only get a philosophy degree if you're going to be an attorney or a teacher. And I didn't want to be either of those things. So I was going to school. I started doing this, and then I ended up just not even finishing school because I got really like busy with work and kind of wrapped up, and this was like what I wanted to do. And I thought I'll go back later and do something more generic, like a business degree or something to like apply to what I'm doing now. And I haven't carved out time for that quite yet.
But here's the thing is like you've garnered all this incredible tech knowledge to the point you're a thought leader in the space and we'll
Yeah,
get to later, but even taking
yeah,
part and putting in one of the leading events in the industry that happens every
yeah.
year. So it just goes to show if you're willing to take on a new challenge and actually immerse, ask the questions, be
Mhm.
deeply curious. And obviously for yourself, you had a passion as well. There's no simple A plus B formula to success. And I think that your story, just in that little nugget there, is such a testament to that.
Yeah, and I felt like when I was in college and you get asked that question all the time, like, what are you going to major in? What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do? I felt such an incredible amount of pressure to choose something and like make a good solid choice. And I remember feeling really overwhelmed, thinking whatever I major in and whatever career path I choose, like that's all I can do for the rest of my life. And that was really, really tough. And that I I'm really glad that I didn't like keep myself in that box, and that I kind of have done things the way that I wanted to do them, because it has certainly been very rewarding and I've had a lot of opportunities I would have never had otherwise. And I also think I wouldn't recommend it. So kids, stay in school, like get your education. It's super important. But the fact that I didn't have a degree and that I knew I wanted to move up and I wanted to be a leader and I wanted to own my own company one day, I always felt like I worked a little bit harder because of that. Like I didn't have the same advantages or the education that, some of my cohorts did. So I would pay the difference with time and energy and effort and being really thoughtful and like always looking ahead at what is coming next and what do I need to be ready for and what do I want to do. And I don't know that I would have been as highly motivated had I gotten that degree.
Yeah, you can't study that fire. You can
Right.
only stoke it. And
Yeah.
obviously, you had this inner ambition to be like, yep, there's only one way this is going, and it's going to be continue climbing to the top. So let's talk about move to DC, because as you said there, so simply, like, I said yes. And I
Yeah.
know that feeling where you're kind of like, this resonates and feels right, but that's a big leap to all of a sudden move your life from coast to coast. So do you remember the feelings of that decision during that time? Were there any queries going in your head, or that naysayer that had some self-doubt, or what did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, always the self-doubt, for sure. And that, like, you don't have a degree, or like, I was also really young. When I started working at the first company, I was 20 years old. So at the time that I'm coming to MotionSoft, I'm 25, 20, maybe 26. And like, I was still really, really young. I also was always like at MotionSoft and the company before it, and the fitness industry as a whole is still a pretty male dominated industry. So like, not only was I young, I was often the only female that was sitting in the room. And so I definitely had a lot of self-doubt that was like, you're not smart enough, you're not mature enough, you're not educated enough, you haven't seen enough. Like, that always was in the back of my head. And to some degree, like, it still lives there a little bit. I just have gotten better at telling it to be quiet. So I was nervous, but I also am a confident person, and I knew that I could make this product better. And I was really genuinely excited about the product. I thought the first time they demoed it to me, I thought, this is going to change the industry. Like, if I could have had the money to build a product, that's what I would have built. So I was genuinely excited, and knew that I could make a positive impact. So I led with that instead of the things that I was nervous about.
Yeah, it's one of the conversations I appreciated so much with you, because you and I were talking on the aftermath of the fly-in, and we touched on that a little bit. And I think that's one thing that I like so much about a podcasting space like this, because I've had so many executives sit where you are and really speak to that same feeling. And it's just so important, if we have ears of people that are looking to grow their skill sets or hoping to be in leadership someday, to understand that that is part of the process. It's not like you all had some sort of magical wand that you wave where that goes away, but it's
Right.
having that deep belief and confidence in yourself seated enough to override that and say, this is just a passing thought that I can let go. I'm going to prove differently to myself. So you're in DC. MotionSoft obviously did very successfully. So talk to me a little bit about how it grows and where the exit happens.
You know, when we first started the product Moso at MotionSoft, the idea was, it wasn't just going to be for fitness. The idea was, this is a product that is flexible enough that it could be used by any subscription type business. And so even down to the fact that you didn't have to call members members, you could call them students, you could call them clients, you could call them customers, you could label things so granularly. And so the idea was like, this could be the software they use in tanning salons or car washes or whatever, which was a really fun, innovative idea. And if you know Al, like, that's how his mind works. So that's like on brand. But what we really quickly learned is it was a massive system that had a lot of configurability. It became really difficult to QA and maintain and have it still be this really high quality product. So we learned really quickly, okay, we're not going to be able to be everything to everyone. And that's maybe not our path. And so what we did instead is we pivoted and we really focused on that enterprise market of the fitness space. Equinox was already a customer. They were just using a legacy product. And so it was a nice transition to be able to have this really influential brand that was already a customer of ours, that was willing to kind of go on that journey with us and make the product really incredible. And so we were like, well, what other brands out there are like Equinox? Like, who else is looking, for a product that's really extensible and that they can really make, their member journeys unique to them and their business. And that's really when we focused on that and really said, we want to look at those multi-unit franchise-based type of businesses and not worry about everything. And we're just going to focus on like our wheelhouse and being best of breed. And we said, we're going to deliver, the ability to manage memberships, billing, access control, and reporting. And those are going to be the things that we focus on. Those are our core tenets. And everything else, they can use products that are made to support that part of the business. So like, we're not going to be a CRM company. There are, amazing CRM brands out there that will do way more than anything we're ever going to build. And we don't need to be a mobile app developer. Like, we don't need to be your email marketing system. Those are not the things that you're going to get a lot of value from us. We're going to focus on these things. And then when we did that, things really took off. And we ended up working with some of the largest, most successful brands in the health and fitness space. We signed Gold's Gym International, which was a huge win. It's such an iconic brand, and that was great. Equinox then also has Blink Fitness as sort of a part of them. So Blink ended up going with us. Crunch Fitness, all of their corporate owned locations converted. So it was a really fun time to just get to work with so many amazing brands. And what a good education for me to get to see how those operators operated and what, all of their secret sauce was and what their technology needs were. So that's what we did there. And then in 2020, we ended up getting acquired by Daxco, which was also very exciting to kind of go from hustling as this sort of smaller startup that was always like grinding. And then we ended up getting acquired by Daxco, and they were a lot bigger company. They were very organized. They had kind of gone through these acquisitions before. So it was a fun experience to kind of see how that side of it worked too.
Well, and having that process of being a little bit more grassroots, deciding you want to go a little bit more niche so that you can grow faster and a little bit more directed. What were some of the biggest challenges and learnings that you did gain throughout that process?
Yeah, there was a lot of them. And it's actually interesting because I think, kind of circling back to my journey, I was always paying attention to what those challenges were and how I could be a part of the solution. Like when Al asked me to come work at MotionSoft, I always knew from day one that the end goal was to sell the company. And that was what I was working towards. And I wanted to like be a big contributor to that. And so when I first started, I was on the implementation side. So I was a business analyst, and then like we didn't have enough project managers. So I learned how to project manage, and I would kind of play both roles in a lot of projects that I worked on. And that was great. I did that for a few years. But then like I mentioned, it was a really, really complex product. And so on the implementation side, we would really struggle with expectations that had been set during the sales cycle and not being able to meet them when we were implementing. And so I went to our executive team and kind of lobbied to move over to sales. I was like, can I come and I'll be like a sales engineer, which we didn't have anybody like that at MotionSoft at the time. I said, I think if we really invest in the sales cycle and we're really upfront about what we do and what we don't do, then I think it will serve us better. And luckily they believed in me and gave me that opportunity. And it really did. It really improved, because we put that time in up front. We did really thorough discovery. We would document, like, these are the things you're not going to have. These are the things that are going to change. All of a sudden we were able to see these implementations go on time and run much more smoothly. And it wasn't so dramatic. But then I realized, okay, we've got the sales stuff down, we've got the implementation down, but then once they're live, there really was very limited support beyond that point. They could call the help desk if they were struggling with something, but beyond that, like, we really didn't have a ton of interaction with them. And so then I said, you know what, I think we need to start a customer success department here. And we need to be, being proactive in our communication with customers and really understanding their strategic objectives and where they're going, so that we can keep them as customers and support them and have them feel like, this is a partnership. You're not just a customer of ours. Like, we are serving you and we need to know what you're doing. So after a lot of explanations to our executive management team on what customer success is and how it's different from account management, they let me do it. And so I ended up spinning up a team there that was just focused on like member relation or customer relationship management. And that was really cool too. So the challenges that we had were we were a lean team. We had a really complex product. We had very smart, very demanding, very innovative customers, and figuring out how to support each phase of their customer journey with a lean team and a lean budget. That was really challenging, but I thought that we rose to the occasion. And at the time that we got acquired, it felt like things were the best they had ever been. Like we had kind of found that rhythm.
Talk about skill acquisition fast and furious, but obviously that speaks to your willingness to not necessarily just stay in one lane. You're like, there's curiosity here. I'm going to jump on and see. And being that person that vocalizes the ideas and really can stand behind why they should be implemented into action. And I want to remind people we've gone from nanny with no intentions of working in a fitness industry
Yes.
to you've got a great voice and on the phones to moving up the ladder of that company, moving your life from West to East Coast into DC, and then growing this company ultimately to a successful exit. When you get to the acquisition for
Mm-hmm.
yourself personally,
Mm-hmm.
did you allow yourself to revel and look back at the journey of the fact that you were nannying with no idea that this was the way you were headed not that long ago?
Mm-hmm. I did. And it was, we literally did this deal with Daxco from our homes in quarantine during COVID. And I thought that it was such a incredible like experience there were so many kind of conflicting things happening at the same time. And even the Daxco team, I stayed on for about a year post acquisition, and I didn't meet the team in real life until almost that year mark, because we were all like, we weren't allowed to travel. We weren't meeting in person. So, yeah, so there was a lot of time in kind of solitude to really reflect and be like, wow, I can't believe we finally did this thing we've been talking about doing for 10 plus years. But B, I can't believe we just did that virtually. From like, I literally was working like at my house was being built. I was working in my parents' bonus room with my daughter who was home and 5 at the time, running around. Like it was chaos. And the fact that we did that was even sweeter than I think it normally would have been.
Well, and especially just going through a time that there was no blueprint for either, right?
Right, right. I mean, yes, and virtually all of MotionSoft's customers, as well as everybody else's customers at that time, were going through bankruptcies, and we were trying to figure out how to support their organization so that they could survive. So all of that was still happening in parallel to this transaction. And we immediately we were excited for a hot minute, and then we immediately had to dive back into, okay, now we have more resources, we have more people. How can we be even better in supporting them? So we just kind of pivoted immediately.
Well, and speaking of pivots, naturally, this is not where the story ends. All of a sudden, a new seed is planted and a new business is born with Alta Technology Group. So, at what point was this seed planted and what was the vision?
Yeah, so it was a very baby seed, and it happened right around the same time as this transaction, where we had had a couple of customers reach out, and they were very excited that we had made this sale, but they were like, "Is there any way that you could, do a little consulting for us on the side? Like, we love working with you, and we don't want to lose that." Because of this transaction. And so Al and I started an LLC just to sort of run like different invoices through there when people needed help. And it was working with MotionSoft customers that we had relationships with. But both Al and I went on to do full-time jobs. So Al ended up transitioning over to a company called DX Factor. And I ended up working with Club Sports Group, which is the largest F45 franchisee, which was super, super fun for me being always on the vendor side to get to be in the operator side. I was their senior director of operations, and it was an incredible experience just to be on the other side of that. So we did that for about 2 years post this transition, and then in January of 2023, I had parted ways with Club Sports Group. Al was sort of feeling like he was ready to do something new. And he just kind of looked at me and said, why don't we just do Alta and like do it all the way? And I was like, I don't know. And he's, let's just try. If it doesn't work, like we can go do other things, but let's just try it. That's what we've been doing ever since. And it's kind of taken off and that was a year ago, a little over a year ago. And it was just the two of us. And now we have a team of 8 and we're really busy and we're like always thinking of how this is going to keep growing. So it's taken both of us, I think, by surprise, but he was more confident that it would work.
Sometimes it's nice though, because I'm sure it's like a pendulum, right? When you are in a partnership that works so well, when there's the one individual that's like, I'm not sure. And that's an important role as well, because you're more than likely more in tune with the blind spots of where it may not. It's not allowing those little blind spots to win. But I think that's where so much incredible problem solving comes, when there is a strong partnership and strong teamwork at play. You talked a little bit when it was the Motion Soft days, how you had all these different branches and then niche down. Well, I think with Alta, obviously you have these amazing branches that have grown. So talk to me a little bit about we started with the seed. So maybe where things sprouted off, because it's far beyond just consulting at this point.
Yeah. So when it started, like I mentioned, like MotionSoft was a really complex product. I know it like the back of my hand. I joke that Moso is my first baby. And so when it started, it was like if somebody wanted help configuring a new promotion or setting up a new agreement template, then I would just help sort of be a system admin. And so it was really kind of tactical work that we were doing. And then it's expanded. So we really have sort of 3 divisions of Alta. We have our business consulting, which started more on that like system administration side, but has now evolved into running a lot of RFP processes for technology decisions that operators are trying to make. We also do like fractional CX work for them. So a lot of brands in our industry don't have a CIO or a CTO, or sometimes even a COO. Like they just, they're running lean too, especially post-COVID. So it's been really great. We've been able to kind of step in and fill these roles and do it in a more affordable way for these operators to be able to have somebody who really knows how to help make these, technology decisions or these operational decisions without having to pay that full-time person to sit in that seat. So the business consulting side has sort of taken off and it evolves, right? Like you help them run an RFP process and you get to really know their business, and then they make a selection of a vendor, and then maybe they also want help to implement that vendor. And so these relationships that we've started have just sort of naturally continued to progress as we've gotten to know these brands better. So we've got the business consulting, and then probably my favorite part, because I feel like this was my dream back in the day, but we also do like product consulting for other software brands in the fitness industry. And so it's funny that the reason I ended up at MotionSoft was because I had so many opinions about what their software should do or could do or how we could be better and all of that. And now I've somehow turned that into a job, and I get to work with some of the biggest software companies in our space and really help them make their products better and their teams and their processes better, because I wore so many hats at MotionSoft and I worked with so many brands, and now that like expertise has been valuable to them. And then the third branch that was sort of an accident too is the event production. So you mentioned we do the Fitness Technology Summit. We produce that event. It actually started as the MotionSoft Technology Summit. And so we have just continued to operate that as Alta. And we've had different brands approach us and say, like, we love the way that you do the summit. We have a user conference for our users, or we have a employee offsite that we do, and they want us to help, manage their education sessions and produce those events and like help spread that in the fitness industry. And so that's been like a fun new branch that has spun up that we weren't necessarily intending on, but it's fun.
Well, we know that history can be a good predictor of the future. And so if we look at your history and the fact that your career in the fitness industry started by
Yeah.
accident, and the fact that this branch started by accident, I'm like, I have a feeling it's going to bode well for you either way.
Yeah.
When we
Yeah.
talk about the Fitness Technology Summit, what
Mhm.
makes it stand out compared
Mhm.
to other industry events perhaps on the calendar?
Yeah. Well, I think like everything we're talking about, it has evolved. So when it first started, it was about 12 years ago. It was the Motion Self Technology Summit, and it was strictly for CIOs and CTOs. And there was no other conference in our industry that was targeting that group. There was nothing that was just technology focused. And even when you would go to events like URSA or different things like that, those things weren't really being discussed. We were talking about sales and we were talking about member retention and things along those lines. So this conference started as, no, let's talk about how to leverage technology to make the fitness industry stronger and better. And it was a small group that has, sort of evolved from there. Today, now we have CEOs that come, we have CFOs, we have CMOs, COOs. So it's not just technology focused, but there's always a technology element. So even if we're talking, specifically about marketing, we will also tie in like different marketing tools that people are using. And I think that what makes our event really unique is, number one, it's invitation only. So we try to make it's catered towards those multi-unit operators or the larger like enterprise segment of the market. And it's C-suite only. So this is really the sort of thought leaders and the primary decision makers that are attending. And it in turn, because of that, because it's this invitation, it's more like an exclusive event, people are really willing to share, and it's become this really collaborative event. And I think that's what makes it special. And so to sit in a room and be listening to a panel, and you have sometimes competitors that are on the same panel, and they're just very open and saying like, hey, yeah, we tried this and it didn't work, so we did this instead. And really just being vulnerable and open about what has worked, what hasn't, what advice they have, how things are received by their team members, how all of that, how they work with, other departments on their teams. I think that that's why year over year, we start to see more types of executives come, because they just want to be kind of immersed in that collaborative learning, like, we're all part of one industry at the end of the day. So I think that's what makes it really special.
Well, there's tremendous value in that, and I think that it speaks to what we're seeing happen in the industry on this larger scale post-pandemic, where
Mhm.
people are wanting to idea share in this new way and understanding if we all elevate and grow together, there is space for all of us here.
Yes.
And the exchange of ideas when somebody's had something and, as you say, tried, tested it, didn't work out. It's like we all have those learnings. And then when one person shares, other people are more willing to share. They
Oh, yeah.
understand it's a safe space. I know last year there's always a theme for the event, and it was the
Mhm.
convergence of health club and healthcare. I know
Mhm.
that you had special guests like Victor and Lynn Brick that were in
Mhm.
attendance that did an incredible mental health talk. And
Mhm.
obviously, we know that's a huge narrative in the industry right now to emphasize to that other 80% that there are all these different benefits. Tell me a little
Mhm.
bit, though, about where this year's event will be taking place, what
Mhm.
the theme is, and why it was chosen.
Yeah, so this year's event is October 21st through the 23rd. It's in Las Vegas, which is very exciting because historically it's always been in the Washington, D.C. area. But we heard from a lot of our West Coast attendees that they would love it to be on the West Coast one year. So we're trying that out this year. And it also gave us the ability to welcome more people. So we're planning on having about 300 people. So it's still pretty intimate and smaller, but about 30% bigger than we've done it in past years. So we're excited about that. And our theme this year is how to attract that other 80%, right? So we know that in our industry today, only 20% of Americans have gym memberships. I think to your point, Chrissy, on the collaboration and like there's plenty to go around, there's actually way more to even go around that we haven't even tapped into. So that's really our focus this year. And like I said, we'll always have, sort of a technology element to it. And I think that's increasingly important in this post-COVID world where finding, the right team members and retaining staff is more and more difficult. Being able to leverage technology and use it in a better way to get more people having gym memberships and getting into that 80% that we're not getting into right now. I think it's a really appropriate conversation for kind of where we're at today.
And I know that the event is really known for very strong people in leadership that are facilitating these panels, taking part in the panels and the keynotes. Who can we kind of expect, or where are you drawing from? I know you can't give everything away, but
Yeah.
because there's
Yeah.
always some good surprises there.
Yeah, no, we are really focused right now on building out our agenda. We spend the most time working on this and thinking about it, and sort of we start paying attention at like this year at the Health and Fitness Association conference, formerly IRSA. We're like on the lookout, like who would be interesting to talk to or to have on panels. So we're pretty thoughtful about this, but I am very excited. We're announcing this week our advisory panel, which is going to be moderated by Rick Caro, who basically invented this industry, and we love him and we trust him very much. So he will be moderating our opening panel. And we've got Brian Myers, who's the CEO of Solid Core. We have Brandon Bean, who's the CEO of Lumen Fitness. He previously was the CEO at Gold's Gym. Carol Nalevenko, who's the president of Village Health Clubs in Arizona, and then Amin Kazaroni, who's the CTO of Orange Theory Fitness. That's our opening panel, and they're going to specifically be talking about strategies for reaching the other 80%. And it's such a distinguished group of people that represent all of the different kind of parts and segments of our industry. So we're super excited to hear from them. And then we have sort of playfully coined this panel our British Invasion panel, but we have a bunch of executives that are coming over from the UK, and they're going to be on a panel together to talk about member acquisition and retention strategies. But we have executives from David Lloyd Leisure, Third Space, Pure Gym, and the Gym Group, which they make up like over 800 locations collectively or something along those lines. So I think it's always interesting to hear from operators in other countries, especially from the UK, because I feel like they sort of run into different compliance type things before we do. So I feel like it's sort of insightful on what's to come. So we're excited about that. And then the other big thing that we're doing this year that's a major shift, but I'm very excited about it, is we're breaking off. Day one will be single track. We're all in one room together like we always have been. But day two, we're going to split off into 2 tracks. And so we have a track that is more focused on like CEOs and CFOs and really getting into kind of the nitty gritty. So we're kicking that off with an education session that's going to be hosted by John Canerick from North Castle Partners. And it's going to be like a financial state of the industry, which I think is really cool and not something we get a lot of opportunity to really talk about or think about. And then we have a panel that we're going to be doing where we kind of deep dive into the exhilarating world of payment processing, and how to
I mean, when you
kind of,
word it that way.
yeah, Al makes it sound very exciting, but I think it's a real thing. Like, everybody takes credit card payments, everybody's paying some, merchant, some processing fees, but a lot of people don't understand how it works, how to negotiate those contracts, how impactful it is on your financials and things like that. So we'll still do the operational kind of marketing focus track, that will be for the CMOs and the COOs that are coming. But I think having this other track that will kind of speak more granularly into the things that CFOs and CEOs really need to be thinking about and care about, we're excited because I think it will have a really positive impact on the industry as a whole.
Well, basically, you put some of the brightest minds possible in one room for the
Mhm.
industry
Mhm.
together to help crack the code on the same question everyone is asking themselves, which is
Right.
about that 80%. So, sounds like a no brainer. And I know if you travel to LinkedIn, there's some codes floating around if people are looking to get their tickets, which they shouldn't delay because they are available now. And I know that I believe I'm gonna shout out to Allison Rand because I know that she's
Yeah.
been shopping a code around.
Yes, yes. Allison Rand, who I'm absolutely obsessed with, has her own promo code. So she is like our first official Fitness Technology Summit influencer. So if anybody's interested, feel free to reach out to Allison Rand. She has a code. But then Shirvani found out she had a code and made me make him one. And they're in a really stiff competition to see who can get more tickets
So,
through their
the battle lines have been drawn. You're gonna
Yes.
have to pick your side, get your tickets, but
Yes.
regardless, wanting to get down there because it sounds like you have such a stacked panel. And I can personally speak to somebody that attended for the first time last year to gather some content in the space. And you could see that sharing in real time action. I understand this is an industry where so many people are so friendly and wanting
Mhm.
to connect and grow together. And it's just you put it all in one room, and it really is an incredible atmosphere that you've cultivated. Add in a little spice of Vegas. It's sure to be a fantastic time. I know
Mhm.
one of your areas of expertise, and I want to quickly touch on this before we wrap up the conversation, but you do a lot of speaking yourself as well, which again, I think is incredible to the testament of your journey because I love stories of I didn't even intend to be here in the first
Yeah.
place. And yet now I'm a expert in the field, and you speak a lot to the health club member journey. So
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
people listening now, what would you say are the top 3 things or areas people should be focusing on when it comes to the health club member journey?
That's a great question. And I think that my passion for this particular topic really comes from the investment I made in learning about customer success. It's really the same thing when you have a customer facing business. So I guess my advice or what I would suggest for anybody is like you have to start with mapping your customer journey. And this is a step that a lot of people skip over, right? They're like, I know my members. This is what we need to do. And you really tend to focus on what your employees are kind of making the most noise about, or members are making the most noise about. But what you really should do is take a step back and invest the time and go through the exercise of mapping what is my customer's journey. And it doesn't start from them becoming a member. It actually starts from them even thinking about the fact that they might want to join a gym or whatever the thought, like my mental health isn't in a great space. What can I do to improve that? Or I want to lose a little bit of weight, or I just started GLP-1s and I want to build muscle. I want to lose my muscle mass. So whatever that is, you have to be asking yourself, what are they thinking about? How are they feeling in that moment? And then what am I doing to appeal to them in that time? Like that's where the member journey starts. So you have to map it. And then it goes from, okay, then they go to your website or they call or they come in, like what's their experience? Then they buy a membership. Then they've been a member for 2 weeks. Then they've been a member for 60 days. And then you have to think about like, what am I doing for my members that have been members for 2 years? And so that's the whole member journey. So you have to map it. You have to understand all of the things they're thinking and feeling and doing in all of those stages. And then you have to really self critically figure out like, what could we be doing better in each of these phases to improve that journey for my members? So that is important. And it, like I said, gets skipped a lot. And so I think that that's there. And then on the member journey itself, like what you need to focus on or what you need to improve, that depends on you and your members and even what type of brand you are, right? So if you're HVLP, you're, making sure that that joining process is as frictionless as possible is probably mission critical to your brand. If you're a boutique studio, what's more mission critical to your brand is being able to really successfully build that community and have that member retention, because competition is stiff and you really need that in that market. So it really depends on your brand. And if you do that customer journey mapping exercise, you'll see this is where we need to focus and this is how we need to prioritize it. And then on the member journey itself, this is more of just like a conversation I can't stop talking about. And I feel like it's been valuable every time we've talked about it. But I think that these GLP-1s are a very serious thing. I think the fitness industry has sort of a tendency historically to be like, all you have to do is go to our gym and follow our nutrition plan and count your macros and you'll be fine. But that's not everybody's journey. And, we talk about gym intimidation and reducing that barrier of entry. I think that GLP-1s are doing that. Whether we like it, don't like it, support it or not, it is reducing that barrier of entry. You have 1 in 8 Americans that are using them today, which is staggering. They are losing weight. So they're seeing immediate results, which is one of the number one reasons that we don't retain members. And we don't know everything about GLP-1s, but we do know that there's a risk of reduction in muscle. And we know that we can help with that. So I would say anybody who isn't coming up with a strategy or a program or a marketing campaign, or anything to embrace this segment of people is going to miss a very serious mark. So I would just really encourage everybody to go do your research, look at what's going on, whether you approve it or not, it's happening. Go figure out a way to have it positively impact your business and for you to positively impact these people's lives.
Real-time actionable advice, which is really just an example of what you represent and have represented through your career. So I want to kind of end our conversation. I like to infuse a little bit of wisdom in people, which obviously you've imparted plenty. But what would be your best advice for those that are industry leaders or leaders in the fitness industry, or those that are really aspiring to reach that level in their life?
Just be a student of our industry. I feel like that is what I have done, and it has served me really well. Read all of the publications that are out there. I know it's hard to be on the road all the time and going to different conferences and shows, but I look at the end of every year, I look ahead at the next calendar year, and I plan which shows I absolutely have to be at and I really want to go to, and go to those and sit and pay the extra money, go sit in the education sessions. I promise you will learn something. Go sit in the sessions of things that you don't know anything about, and you'll learn, and it's helpful. I think that what I always say about the fitness industry is that it's always evolving. The problems that we might have today are not problems we had a year ago. I love to use annual maintenance fees as an example of that. Nobody was charging an annual maintenance fee, and then somebody decided it would be a good idea, and then all of a sudden every software vendor in the space had to figure out how to accommodate that in their product. And then it evolved. Then it wasn't annual, then it was 3 months after you joined. It's everybody wants to the creativity and innovation in our industry, to kind of perpetuate our success is what makes it so fun and so exciting. But you have to be a student of it. You have to really study and the GLP-1s, pay attention to what is happening in our world around us, and where we could be a part of it and get more members and penetrate that 80%. You just have to be kind of thinking about it all the time. And then things will just kind of find their way to you, or you'll see an opportunity and you'll get excited about it and you'll find that you're really passionate, and then you go do whatever you want with it.
Before we let you go here, just remind people once again what the dates are of the Fitness Technology Summit and where can they get their tickets?
Yes. So the dates are October 21st through the 23rd. It's in Las Vegas, Nevada at Caesars Palace. Tickets are invitation only. Unfortunately, we are sold out of sponsorships for this year. But if you're interested in sponsoring next year, you can reach out to me. Tara at getalta.com is my email. And then if you are an operator and you're interested in attending or having some of your team members attend, you can reach out to me via email. You can go to our website, thefitnesstechsummit.com, and submit an inquiry form, or you can connect with Al Noshirvani or myself or Allison Rand on LinkedIn, and we can send you over a link. So they're not published, but if you send in an inquiry and you're an operator who wants to attend, we'll send you a link to register.
Brilliant, Tara. Well, thank you so much. I know it's busy times ahead as you're getting ready for this event, plus all the other elements on your agenda. So I so appreciate you joining us here on ATFW.
Thank you for having me. Keep doing everything you're doing, and I can't wait to see you in Vegas in October.
You've just listened to the All Things Fitness and Wellness podcast, hosted by Chrissy Van. This episode was brought to you by Fitness World, your fitness, your way. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes weekly featuring industry insiders and influencers. Together, we're on a mission for everyone to live a life fit and well.